Hey there, Foster Fierce family. Welcome to Interview with a Foster Kid, where we dive into the raw and unapologetic stories of Foster Fierce alumni, driven by a passion for creating a better future for our foster siblings around the world. I'm your host, Amira Therese, and I want to hear your story too. If you're ready to share, reach out to me at iwafosterkid@gmail.com, and don't hold back. We tell stories on this show so honest, they'll make your caseworkers blush. Now it's time for our next Foster Fierce episode. Listen mindfully and please enjoy. Welcome back, Foster Fierce Nation. I'm Amira Therese, your host of Interview with a Foster Kid, and I am here today with Kurtis Learned. Kurtis is a former foster child. He is a Foster Fierce alumni, and his story is already making changes. I know that what I have heard so far has inspired me, and I'm so glad, Kurtis, that you are here today to inspire our alumni and our siblings still in care. Let us know more about yourself.
Hello, I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to speak and this platform to speak on. I don't even know where to start. Everything seemed to start so early. And it's, I can, start off at 3 years old. The earliest memories, just, knowing that my mom, we lived in houses that didn't have power, didn't have, running water. So we had outhouses and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that was, pretty normal. And I didn't know why, but it was more because my mom just had zero desire to do much in life other than drugs, and chase guys around. So,
Relatable.
and that became as we moved into town, I just saw it more. I actually saw less of her. I saw more of the partying, but saw less of her. She would be off, and I would have to go find her most of the time at the bars, and became a regular at most of the bars in the Bitterroot Valley in Montana.
I mean, you were, I don't know. I feel like it's an excerpt of my own life, some of it. I mean, wow. This is what I'm talking about to our audience. This right here, it bridges the gap of isolation. I'm learning right now how to articulate things in my own life by listening to Kurtis. So Kurtis, I want to let you know you are not alone. And right now I'm not either because of you sharing this story, but please continue.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wonder every day, and especially more often as I get older. I have two amazing kids of my own that will never know the life I did or you did. I say that I get emotional when I talk about that because I just, recently I was mentioning kind of before we went on, my biological father passed away. I didn't think it was going to affect me when my mother did, and I didn't think it was going to affect me when he did, but, it has. It's, but I also know that I protected my kids from them. They both tried to be part of their lives and my lives, and at points where they were still sick. My mother was still very sick in her addiction. She was living on the street. She was doing drugs. She had Hep C. She had MRSA, and she wanted me to come let her stay at my house. And my kids were very young toddlers, and I'm like, I can't do it. I just, not in a million years, But with my father recently passing too, just this weekend, I just text my kids more, I want them to know how much that they've given me, because I often blame myself as a kid, I was being brought home at 7, 8 years old by the police for breaking and entering. I broke into my elementary school twice by the time I was 8. I already had a record for breaking and entering, and my mom, I'm getting better at this misplaced anger that I had towards police officers because I used to see them mistreat my mom. But now as I think about it, I'm like, wow, if I watched a lady with a young 7-year-old kid doing what my mom was doing, I would be very upset, no matter how professional I was supposed to be. I don't know that I could have been.
I've been traumatized by what I've seen from police, but, and you bring up such a good point, and it almost gives me some empathy for them. How many times do they see it too? Like how many times a day are they watching children abused, abandoned in situations that make them disgusted and full of hatred? That must be a very challenging thing for them to navigate and to balance and then to continue doing their job. So I couldn't do it. I mean, I have enough grudges to where if I saw it once, You'd be lucky if I called the police.
I wanted to be the court advocates for foster kids at one point, but I'm like, I don't know that I couldn't stop myself from jumping the bench
See,
and
that's
wanting to attack people because I'm so angry with what happens to foster kids and in different institutions. Like, yeah,
that's
my
why I'm
mom
not a
finally gave me
foster parent. That's why I can't be a foster parent. And I know what to do. I know what they
yeah,
need.
yeah,
But I couldn't do it
I
because I
know.
can't stop myself within the yellow tape that foster parents have to live in. I'd be busting through that
Yeah.
tape all the time.
Yes, and it is, and I look back and I realize my foster mom, I had one good foster home out of from 8 to 18. My mom finally, the state told her after me being brought home so many times. And then I literally, I was huffing gas with a friend of mine at 9 years old, and I passed out of these rafters and fell like 12 feet onto a concrete floor and woke up on a
Jeez.
stretcher going to the hospital. And I'm like, I think those were some of the last straws. My mom, they were like, look, we're taking him or you give him up. And she dropped me off at a friend's house and was like, I'll see you next Monday, and never came back. And,
Jesus.
there's a lot of stuff in between there. There's, I think
Yeah.
about the first time I got stoned was there was a big party and I was 5. They had like a 4 foot tall bong, and they all were smoking on it, and then they left the room. And so I pulled a chair up to it because I see them hitting, I just was emulating what they were doing. Like they're all
Right.
doing this, putting their mouth up there, and then they're laughing and having fun. So that must be what you do in life.
Right.
Then remember going out on a motorcycle ride with one of the guys who was just drunk and stoned. I'm on the back of his motorcycle at 5 years old. I'm like, later on that guy wound up going to prison for accidentally killing his stepson. It's like,
Jeez.
by slamming his brakes on in his car and hitting him in the dash. It's like,
You're
I
meant
think
to
about
be
things a lot.
here. Curtis, you are meant to be here. I mean, the things that we're allowed to look back on now. I know we like to mention our empowering friend, Ray Freeman, who I've had on my show. One of the things that I love, he made a post today. Gosh, and I wish I could remember the wording, but it was like grateful for my struggles that I was allowed to overcome, and like being
So
grateful for the things that made us survivors, the things that made us strong, the things that made us
it's hard.
interesting.
It's hard to get to that. Like I appreciate him being, as his vocal as he is about it, because it is. It's like, I appreciate the struggles, but sometimes I'm mad at them. Like why,
Absolutely.
why so many? Like geez, just I didn't think I had much of a story. I didn't think I would. It was any different than any other normal person out there. Just although I don't ever feel normal in a room full of people. So, and you know
Same.
that.
Yeah, I want to go back
Um,
actually, kind of. I want to touch back on because you said, and I'm so sorry to hear this, that your biological father passed away, and I want to mention to people out there, the other alumni listening, they know, but we deal with this a lot differently. Like Curtis, I didn't think I was going to react. I was so over the idea of even needing parents. My mother hasn't passed yet, but let me tell you, I'm where I am mentally with her that I was before my dad passed. I thought, I'm not going to cry. I might celebrate. I know that sounds awful, and there aren't a lot of people to tell that to. But guess what? I did cry. A piece of me died without validation. A piece of me, in my specific story, was just gone. And I didn't have really a chance to get to know it. I didn't have a chance to explore it. And there were a lot of factors there. So I just want to go back to that, Curtis, because some people, they think, oh, we're not mourning right. Maybe we're sociopaths, or we're
that's what
not.
I
Why didn't you cry? Why did you cry? That was your abuser. That was your neglector. So just tell me a little bit more about what you went through, if you're okay to do that.
yeah. I didn't have any relationship with the man until I was 15. So I'd been in foster care from 8 to 15, and then was at a random emergency foster home, and my sister somehow got a hold of my father, and all of a sudden the state was just happy because I was such a handful. They were just like shipping me. Like I found, I think about it now, and I'm like, they were shipping me across the country on a Greyhound bus at 15 by myself.
My
I'm like,
sister
what?
and I did that. They did the same thing. Two little girls, 12 and
I had
13.
it. Yes.
That's insane.
I had this weirdo in Indianapolis try to get me to get a room with him, like for so long. He was working on me and just working until I had to scream at him. And then all of a sudden, all the
Yeah.
cops and everybody in the Indianapolis bus station looked at us because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting in a room with you, weirdo. Because he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be one of those guys that tries to do anything to you and all that. But I was like,
That's what they all
still to this day,
say.
I'm like, trying to get rid of me? Were they like secretly trying to get rid of me? Because that's a long ways. I was going from Missoula, Montana to Indianapolis, Indiana. You're going through Minneapolis, Chicago, and those are all big bus stations for a
May I
15-year-old
be
kid. But
blunt? May I be blunt? Because I was you,
yeah,
Kurtis. I mean, I was that child. My behavior was their excuse. I think that they were. I think they were because we were the incorrigible ones. And
yep.
guess what? I went missing in the system twice. But guess what didn't stop? Their paychecks for having me. I was still part of that lucrative surplus, that $5,000 to $33,000 annually that the state makes in surplus. That doesn't go to us or to carers or to any programs. So I was still lucrative to them. They weren't looking for me, and I think they were trying to lose me. And that's blunt, it's
I didn't.
abrasive, and it's just my opinion, but that's what they leave us with. So I'm with you.
It's like it. Yeah, and and I keep seeing. I didn't think they were doing as much stuff. But I don't know if you watched that Curious Case of Natalia Grace, where she was adopted from Ukraine. She was the little person they thought, she was older than she was when they adopted her. Well, there was a family she eventually went to live
Writing
with, and
that
they're like
down.
professional foster family. They have so many kids, neither of them work, and then they went and started a little church, and they make so much money off their foster kids, none of them work. It's just those are the kind of things I try to tell people about. There's foster families out there that, yeah, I had one where I was working 8 hours a day as a summer youth
Yep.
job, and then they were like, we want you to come home and work for 4 hours stripping parts off of cars, another couple hours cleaning up the welding shop. I'm like, look, man, I said, you already took away my allowance, and I said, okay, I have to do chores, that's understandable, but now you're trying to get free work out of me, like 6 hours. I'm like, I already work 8 hours a day. I said, if you want to pay me minimum wage, I'll do it, but other than that, no. And that's
Yeah.
the weird family, right? When I was starting to get a hold of my dad, and they sent me to a group home for 6 months. I wasn't supposed to leave it because I wasn't on a high enough level. They were upset that the state was like, just get him out of here. He's out of our hands. And I went to my dad's in Indianapolis for a year, which got me into a lot more. I got into gangs, was expelled from school in Indianapolis for gang fighting. And we didn't have a place to stay unless he had a girlfriend. And then my
Mm.
aunt took me in. She wouldn't let him in there much. My brother, who finally came out to live with me out in this way, and he's doing great. But he didn't get to really know the guy very much either. It's just, yeah, we didn't have anywhere to go out there. And I spent about a year out there. Then him and I got into a fight, and the cops took me to another attention home, and I ran away with a couple black friends of mine, and we went to the part of Indianapolis it's not for people of color, and just because that's the only place I knew anybody to get money from. So we
Right.
snuck into that area of town, got chased out by straight Nazis. My
Yeah.
friend's like, why'd you bring us over here? We could see the paintings on, I'm like, I know, we're just trying to get money and weed, and so we can go, we're on run. We're 15,
Yeah.
and we all, after a couple days, got sick of being on the run, went back to the place. They checked us back in, and then they shipped me back to Montana a week later, put me back in the, another attention home. Yeah, I started thinking about that. They have pictures of me when I was 15 at the very first one, like feeding a
Mhm.
squirrel out on the front porch, and I thought back to this old guy Rod, who used to, like, this guy was on me, like he really tried to change me, and I think that now I'm like, oh man, I was such a dick to him. I was so mean to that guy. I probably gave him so many gray hairs or made him lose so many of his hairs. And I'm like, oh, he didn't have to be there for that long. He didn't have to put up with
Right.
my shit. He could have moved on to a different job, but I think
Mhm.
he enjoyed helping kids. He was never that weirdo type of, I didn't have that happen to me. I was physically abused, but I was never sexually abused. Like a lot of people, I was lucky, or if it happened, I have no recollection of it. Thanks. Go
Can
ahead.
I touch on that real quick? Because you did say that you
Yeah.
had children also. And I found something. So, my very first guest on this podcast was actually my aunt and former foster mother. And one of them, I was in about 30 different placements because I too, Kurtis, was incorrigible, aren't we? Aren't we in our demands for respect and stability just the
Yeah.
worst? But anyway,
And I'm,
but she brought something up. And so I want to bring this up just because you were talking about blocked out memories. And I deal with that. I've been told before, put pen to paper. And as a writer, it really is a slap in the face when people are like, write your memoir. I'm like, "Ugh, I would. That's my talent other than speaking. But sometimes I'll be writing my memoir and then another very distinct memory happens, overlaps that timeline. And I'm like, wait, this can't be all one life. where did this memory come from? My aunt mentioned that she's also a forensics nurse and actually dedicated her life to child welfare after she was an ER nurse. But she mentioned that something happens to us psychologically when we have children. And it's really unfortunate too for our kids who have to go through this with us. But love my daughter. Thank you for sticking through. But one of the things that happens is memories are unearthed through each stage of our child's life. And they start to come back to us, like something that happened to us when we were their age or something. I want to know if that happened to you, but I also want to say that I too have a very difficult time, not only telling my story, but with imposter syndrome, because my memories are so skewed. I don't know if what I'm saying is accurate or if it's going to change tomorrow. I know it happened, but the details are often skewed, right? And then they'll be unearthed later.
Yeah, and then sometimes I have like there's so many things that have happened to us. It's like people don't believe that many things can happen to a person in their lifetime. And I'm like, I don't, I really, yeah, I wish it didn't. I wish I could tell you I was lying about all this crap, But it's like, yeah, they just don't believe that anything amount of stuff can possibly happen to a person, or especially a young person, and nobody did anything about it and they just let it go on. And I'm like, there are. I remember the first foster home, like I saw that poor thing with a 13-year-old girl, like she wasn't in their age range. That family all of a sudden, like, oh, she's not in the age range we want, so we want to get rid of her. I'm like, holy shit, what you just did to that girl, it makes me upset.
Hopeless.
Like, emotional.
It's hopeless
like,
sometimes.
You just wanted a kid from 1 to 12 years old, and when they turn 13 and they're a little difficult, you just want to bail. It's like, that's hard. And I that one good foster home I had, I said 3.5 years at one good foster home, and I learned so much from those people that if it hadn't been for that, I don't think I would have ever got my life changed. I mean, I spent most of my 20s in federal prison and locked because I was a gun-toting drug dealer, according to them. I just really wasn't that. It was a weird. If I went through the whole thing of everything, it was more of an entrapment. And I never brought it out.
You were working with the police on this?
No, they were just, I didn't know they were the police. It was their informant. No. He set me up. He was working the police and me, both sides. And they even said afterwards that he was the dirtiest guy they ever used. And they were sorry they had to use him, but he got the job done or whatever. But I'm just like, okay.
You're an easy target. So am I. I mean, when you're a foster kid, think about bio kids. Your parents are fighting for them. We're our own companionship. We're isolated into thinking our ideas are the most comprehensive ones when really we come out of foster care typically only knowing what not to do. So when we aren't supported and taught what we should do, of course, what we're going to do is what we know how to do, which is what not to do. And it also makes us targets. Right after I got out of foster care, I thought, didn't you, that when you graduated foster care, it was over? It's not. They followed me. No, they took my daughter from me and I had to fight to get her back. And I did. And I sued Arizona CPS. I was a powerhouse. But let me tell you, you're never out of the system, are you?
No. It feels like they, and in Montana, they kind of wanted to wash their hands with me. So when I got sent back after my dad and I got into it, and Indianapolis is, what, we're done. This was a mistake. You guys can have him back. And Montana was like, oh, okay. They stuffed me in the detention home again. My bio mother decided to come back from California, and she left parole, and she was on the run, and I didn't realize it. And I just got a bag of weed from some lady who was doing a community service, and we traded like a necklace for some weed. And I was talking to my mom and a house parent, and I thought I got my mom in trouble. They were like, well, we want to call California and make sure that her parole officer knows she's here and all this. And I'm like, well, shit, I haven't seen this lady in, so long. I want to at least go see her, And so I took off on a run, hitchhiked 30 miles down to Stevensville, which hitchhiking in Montana is just normal.
Yeah.
It's
not for a child.
Not as many. No, yeah. Right. I went down there, and my sisters eventually convinced me to go turn myself back in. And after talking with them, they're like, well, we'll just put you with your sister and your mom's staying there, and we'll just give her the money each month. And I just left. As soon as they put me in there with her, I went and got my own place. I was peeling logs at a log home factory. And so I was hitchhiking 6 miles to work every day. And some guy was like, he was just impressed with it. And he was like, I was talking about needing a place to live. And so he rented me a trailer. I wasn't even old enough to do it. And he didn't even check into any of it. He just like rented me the trailer. And I'm like, I went and got the electrical in my name. Then after a while, I went and did some bad shit with one of my friends, and the cops came and raided my house. And the state found out that I wasn't really living with my mom. And so after putting me in juvie jail for a couple months, they put me back with her for 4 months at this motel on house arrest. They said they gave her a chunk of money and said, we're done. When he's 18, we don't want to see you or hear from you guys again. I never saw any of the money. I don't know what's, I just was like, I didn't really care. Mom was a junkie. She was still never got clean.
They knew that.
You know,
what sucks,
yeah.
I mean, and I say sucks because, I don't want to reduce my podcast to one that needs to be edited by parents. This is awful hearing this. Kurtis, this happened to me. Okay. I mean, your details vary just slightly. And the fact is, this is a real issue. Why did they keep throwing you back in at your behest to your mother's home? It's lucrative. It's lucrative to keep displacing you. Do you know that every time that you are displaced, say I have 30 homes under my belt, 30 placements. And what they kept doing is throwing me back into my abusive mother's placement, wherever she was. She could have been at a women's shelter, homeless, in a hotel, like you said, living with some new guy. It didn't matter. She kept throwing me back in. And every time I went back to the system, it was a new place. And I was marked up another level of incorrigibility. And guess what? The incentive was to level me up and then lose me. Because by the time I left, I was one of those $33,000 annual kids that was making the state a surplus because I was so incorrigible. All these bureaucracies, if I read my report, it says a lot of people were involved in my life that were not. These were bureaucracies introduced to help me out of the predicament I was in. Where were they? These are just things on paper so that they get paid.
Yep. So those names, there was only ever 1 or 2 or 3 people in there making decisions on my life. I could hear them half the time I was sitting out in front of the office,
or in
I just had to go taken away from home because like I told that one lady when I was up there and they were trying to get me to do all the extra work, and we just heard from my dad. That's when she came up and hung up the phone. Like she just hung it up without even saying anything to me. And I was like, I lost my mind. And I said some very mean things, told her I was going to hurt her in certain ways. And she called the police, and I just walked off, and the police came and arrested me. And I had money in my pocket, which was funny. I had money in my pocket. I've been working with this only deputy in this town with the school on the program 40 hours a week, so he knows where I get my money. And so when he comes and picks me up, he's like, oh, where you got all this money in your pocket? Like I stole it from somebody else. I'm like,
or like you have a bank.
Dude.
Like, what are you supposed to do with the money that you earn? Give it to your foster parents?
Yeah, and he was just like, well, that's a lot of money to be carrying. I'm like, well, you know where I get it. I work with your deputy every week for, the past, 5 weeks. You've known about me and where I work. And I said, just take me to jail, do whatever you got to do, but just don't take my damn money, Because that's what I felt like. Every time they would always lose my money. It would get lost, or, I left that home. And, and it's weird to me because there was one kid who made it through that home really well. And I'm like, how did that guy make it? How did he make it and I couldn't?
I have a little story.
Yes.
I have a story based on my son, Jack. Jack is a lot like me. Super hyperactive, very clever. And if you want to know a little bit about something, too bad, because he's going to tell you everything he knows. Okay. Great kid. But there was an incident. Now I don't know if you've seen the Goldbergs, but I'm like Beverly Goldberg for my kids. You will give my kids the best of everything, or I will wallflower this school. And I don't go away very easily. And so there are schools in Arizona that just don't want me to walk into the office. They're like, what did we do? But anyway, with Jack in 3rd grade, and this story plays into what you said, and it's about favoritism. So of course I look at my child and I say, how the hell could you not love this child? Everything, any perturbance is actually lovable, Well, my kid was being bullied by his 3rd grade teacher. And because I got a written and public apology out of her in front of her class to my son, I won't mention her or the school because she's done her part. But
She's done her part. Good job.
She admitted to me, and so did the principal when he arranged this meeting, that sometimes the class would be going crazy, just wild. They'd all be so hyper. Gosh, dang, these 3rd graders. Ugh, shut up and learn. But she said, it doesn't matter who would be talking. I have to admit to you that sometimes Jack would be the only one who got on my nerves. Now, she's telling me this as if I'm therapy. I'm not. I'm a very biased mother right now. And my anger, this isn't just redness in my hair, it's being created. So I'm sitting there fuming, and she is honestly, to her credit, genuinely, vulnerably telling me that sometimes Jack will say something and she'll just be like, gosh, Jack, would you just shut up? Oh my God. And I'm like, okay, as his mother, I get that there are times when you need one of your kids to shut the heck up because you got things going on. As his teacher, okay, who is admitting to me that she has favorites and that Jack is not one of them. I thought that that was very revealing because it happens, doesn't it, organically with people. I mean, we don't even know we're being biased. And I feel like I'm with you on, I wasn't the kid that made it. And I've seen kids make it through homes where I'm like, either their tolerance level is way higher than mine, or I'm just not the product this parent thought they were purchasing. So I relate to you on that. And I want to say it's favoritism. Also, some of us, have you ever been told you're too big, or you're like, oh, you got a big personality, you're a lot? Because those were the things that described me. I was a lot, and I still am. And God forbid they get in my way.
Yeah. The first place my mother dropped me off and said, I'm going to be back. And I'm like, why do I need all my stuff? And I kind of figured it out as she was leaving, It's like that home, eventually, my foster brother, he was like my best friend through like the first, second grade. I didn't know it and he didn't know it at the time, but he was adopted. And so they were like, we already are set up for that kind of stuff, so we'll take him in. But I was just so wild and out of control after she took off and was calling all the time from prison saying she's going to do better and come back. And, I got so angry at the world. They finally thought that I was going to taint my brother and told them that they had to take me out of the home. It's just like,
Wow.
I don't want to be mad at them for it because they took a chance, and I get it. I was out of control. But how many times were you given up on? It's like
You weren't out of control, Kurtis. You were not out of control. Your situation, what were you supposed to do? What control did you have? What autonomy? What respect? Did anybody look at you and say, these are the most amazing things about you? Let's focus on those. Let's foster those. No, they looked at you like your labels. You're coming into the situation with a warning label or a few. You didn't have an opportunity. You were playing the cards you were dealt. And I just want you to know that there is nothing wrong with a resilience warrior who can survive certain death. And the things that we went through, most people don't survive. I'm really proud of you. And I want to ask you something though. So I too had the issue. My sister was the good one, and was more desirable. She actually got to go into kinship care with my uncle, and he was not a good foster parent. I don't know if I dodged a bullet or not. What I do know, I did there, but I was evading others at the same time. What I do know is that I was jealous when it happened, and I was pissed off. I actually did hold it against her for a little while, thinking that she left me when my whole life was getting a job instead of 8th grade so I could help take care of her and get her the school things that she needed, taking the abuse if mom promised not to do it to her, and just being there for her 100%. It took a lot of maturity to realize how out of control of our lives we were. And we're still very close today. But that was a hard one. I want to talk more about your mom. How was that feeling of her always saying, I'm working on it? Because I know my mother made it seem like the state was in our way. My father was in our way. Everything but her. And there never was any progress. But I just want to know, what did that messaging say to you as a young man?
It got me angrier and angrier every time she didn't come through, because I'd be telling my friends, look, my mom's coming back. She's doing it this time, and it's just, so it's just those, it hits you hard, because then it doesn't happen, and then you feel like an idiot, and you feel like all your friends are looking at you like, you're an idiot, and it's not your fault. You can't control what the person's doing. And she did that to me for so many years. And then I was at that one good foster home, and she is actually going to come back from California just out of the blue with one of her Johns, because she was a hooker. And my foster mom and dad put me on a plane to Florida, because that's where my foster grandpa was. And they took me down there, just didn't tell me shit was going on. And she showed up, OD'd in our bathroom, I guess, while I was gone. So I realized that, they weren't all bad. foster homes, and when I left that one, I was, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life was they were being not mean. They were holding one of my sisters accountable for her actions, and I didn't like it. And so I called the state and said, I want to leave. I wish I never would have done that because it was just, yeah, it was home after home after home that, and you got more than me, but
No, no, no. Let me tell you,
you know,
I'm relating to you. I've looked back and said, God, I wish I would have just made that work. I wish I wouldn't have, overreacted. And then I also look at some of the things I went through, in some places. And to your credit and to mine, it is difficult when we are children to draw a contrast between which stranger is behaving in which way for which reason. I'm with you there. I have looked back and thought, oh, I wish I could have made that work, you know?
knowing what I know in the system, it's got to be harder for women going through it. My sisters both were in it. We were all separated for a few years, and then that foster home got us back together, and that was like, that's why they're just amazing people for doing it. And,
Yeah.
Eventually, it's weird shit. I got shot with a fully automatic machine gun on accident laying on the couch, but my
By a
foster dad was
foster
next police.
parent?
Yeah, and he was like he was an ex cop from Boston, and
Oh my God.
they like, and I was laying on the couch, we watching Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and two bullets went off, and I'm like, I look over, and there's two holes in the couch, and I didn't even know I was shot, and I lift up my arm, and blood's coming out, and it was so loud right next to my head. My foster dad's trying to talk to me, and I couldn't hear him, and he finally lifted up my arm, and I saw the blood, and then he put a tourniquet on it, and we had to drive 30 minutes to the nearest hospital, but yeah, I was like looking at the couch and I saw two holes and I started feeling my head because I didn't feel this. I'm like, what if the other one hit me somewhere and I didn't feel it? Yeah, but it was yeah, it was really
Grace.
weird. My
Oh my
sister,
God.
yeah,
Oh my
it was
God. And
but
you know what's crazy? I bet he was still a foster parent after that. Do you know parents are in prison for things like that? And that guy
I
probably got
know
to be a foster parent again.
and they actually had a charge of burning like a what do you call that when you burn your own shit down for insurance? Um,
Arson, is it?
Yes,
Arson?
and
Yeah.
yeah, arson. That's it. They had an arson charge that was actually they pled guilty to trying to get insurance money out of there or something. And I was like, but still, when I think about it, that was still the best foster home I ever had. 3.5 years at that place was. I learned hard work. I used to change
Yeah.
sprinkler pipes. I bought pails. She used to make me rake pine needles. I'm like, why the fuck am I raking pine needles? They're just gonna fall on the ground again. But she's like, you just have to be doing something. You just can't be sitting on your ass all the time in life. So I got a very good work ethic from that 3.5 years at that home. I played. She took me to sports. Like growing up, nothing. I had my mom. I got myself into wrestling right before my mom left and took off, and she never made it to one match. I wrestled
Mm.
all year. She never made it to one match, and that my foster mom made it to all my stuff.
How did you continue to encourage yourself to keep performing, to keep doing what makes you happy? Because it's so hard to find that support and that validation in ourselves. And that's a really important thing. What did wrestling bring to your life, and how did you continue doing it without any support outside of yourself?
That's just it. With that one there, I fell off. I didn't think that she gave a shit about me enough, and I lost every match and I tied one that year, and then she never made it to a single one, so I didn't try sports again. We moved to another town
Oh,
shortly after, and that was also the one when you say third grade and getting bullied by a teacher. That was the one where, at one point, my teacher drugged me across the room by my hair and threw me into my seat, and I jumped up and punched her and got expelled
good
for
for
it
you.
because
I'm sorry, but good for
yeah,
you.
well, I know, yeah, I was like she drugged me like
I'm
feet
not
dragging. And
encouraging, I want to say I'm not
you know,
encouraging violence, but don't start things with foster kids that you
yeah,
don't
we're
want us to finish.
yeah, because it's yeah, like I didn't know how to react, and then my sisters came by in the hallway and they saw me bawling in there, and I'm telling them what's going on, so they expelled me from that school. I went to in the fifth grade, and then another teacher tried to grab me by the arm, and I'm like, look, I know what the fuck. Just I can walk myself to the office, leave me alone. And
Mm,
I get down there, and they're like, "You want us to call your grandpa?" I said, "I don't give a shit what you do." I'm like, "I'm
call
used to
you,
this shit. Do
call
whatever you
whoever
want
you
to do."
want. I don't
And
care.
then, because he tried to step into my life for a minute, and when I got home, boy, I was like one of the first times he held me up by my head, by my feet, and kicked me in the head and shoulders. He was so mad at me. I was like, that was the first time I really got abused. There's people in my family who've still never heard that, so I hope it
Well,
doesn't hurt them.
let
I
me
mean,
tell you,
I know they're
I'm not a I'm going to say I am not a big fan of look, there's such thing as
campaign.
redemption, forgiveness, whatever. But you put yourself into my story. You put yourself into Kurtis's story. And now it's part of the story we're going to tell. I am a big fan of shining a light where shadows used to be. So I'm glad that you're here telling this story. And we don't owe it to anybody to protect anybody, especially those who did not protect us. We owe them nothing. You are doing this because you love yourself, and they tried their hardest, okay, to prevent that. And I'm really proud of you for being here and for saying it. So let's not protect anybody who chooses to live in the shadows.
Gotcha. No, and I thought about, because I saw him do many other things. I watched him pimp my aunt out, his own daughter. I watched him smack her and make an exchange of something with a gentleman. I was hiding in the room because the house we bought used to belong to a cop. Long before we moved in there, I used to hang out with the cop's son, and so I knew the house very well. And there were all sorts of hidden, weird places in the walls. It was just the weirdest house to me. But I remember once sneaking out and seeing in my grandpa's room him leaving a guy there with my aunt after he smacked her across the face, and then made an exchange with the guy. And I'm like, I'm 11 years old. I'm not stupid. I've already been hearing stuff about my mom. I know things are, and he would leave us with this house. He would get his allotment of money from foster care and then leave us with this house. My sisters would throw just monster parties. I was 11, and so they were 14 and 15. So then all the high schoolers, were bringing beers. I had a bunkhouse out back. So I was drinking. Yeah, I was pounding beers all regularly at 11. I had a little A&W beer mug by my bed, and I would, one or two beers a night. And I'm like, I'm 11 years old. Wow. And that was right before I went to that good foster home where they got us all together. And like I said, if it hadn't been for that, I don't think I would have found a center at some point. Because like I said, I was messing up. I thought I was used to convicts working out in the, when my mom was around, that's all I was used to was convicts in the living room, and, them talking the way they do, the way I probably did talk for a long time, because I heard Tony, you talking like Safford, Arizona is where I sat for almost 5 years of my life, in little Safford, Arizona. So it's.
Oh, I didn't end up in prison, but I was on that path right after I aged out. The system just had not had enough of me. My biological paternal grandparents, my grandmother didn't like that I wasn't under her thumb. She's one of those people that will light a fire in your hair to help you put it out and then want some heroic credit.
Yeah.
Well, I put it out. And she got upset with me for not being totally under her thumb. And I grew up too with criminals, the Hells Angels, my dad was the landlord. So we had a lot of them just living on the acres of our property out there in the desert when I was out there. Guns everywhere.
It was from the Dirty Dozen.
Oh God, right. Their rivalry was a fun one to hear about to this day, I'm like, can you not? Can you not? I don't care. All I know is they're both bad parents. Okay.
Yes.
But, so at 8 years old, my grandma taught me on a 38 ROTC special how to shoot in case my mother came onto the property. She said, shoot to kill because you don't know what they'll do to you. My mom was traveling with the Rainbow Gathering, and my parents used me and my sister as pawns in their ridiculous unsyndicated TV show that they were playing out for themselves. And when I was 18, I aged out, ran back to that situation. Long story short, she accused me of stealing a gun when I said that I was no longer going to be there. Ironically, that 38 ROTC special that she taught me how to aim at my mom. So the constable showed up at my door 3 days later. I didn't have possession of it. They didn't care. I was a foster kid. I had no credibility. My parents were who my parents were. And somehow the matriarch, my grandma, who raised this damn criminal mountain, was the good one who didn't deserve whatever I did, which I didn't know until I went to court. That was 2 years of my life after that, going through criminal systems, being in jail, being on probation, checking in with a probation officer, all while being a single mother with zero. I mean, they were judging me based on all that I knew. And it was very hard to get out of that. I did stints in jail. I used to say I've been to jail in every Arizona county because no matter what I did, I was getting arrested. And I didn't just get a ticket. I was put in jail every single time. Speeding, goodbye. I don't know what it was. Maybe my face.
Is that too? People get so many chances, and I never got, when in the system, at 19, I was the youngest person on my indictment. I had the longest criminal history, and I got the most time out of everybody. I still find myself getting angry with people who are in, like you're out there doing this, you're in the middle of it, and then you get in trouble, and so you want to ruin his life. In my mind, I'm like, I don't know, it didn't ruin mine. If I wouldn't have gotten in trouble, I wouldn't have had the chance to change. And if I
True.
hadn't have got as much time as I did, because they gave me 6 years to start with, and I'm like, and I did 5 years, 3 months, 13 days, and I left Arizona, and they tried to give me 5 more in the state of Montana. I'm like, they extradited me all the way up to the judge, like, he just did 5 years, and you guys didn't run this concurrent. And he goes, this is stupid, and he gave me probation. And I was
Wow.
like, thank you. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting out in front of the jail, and
Now
I
you're in
don't know anybody.
Montana.
I'm like,
Yeah.
in Montana, that's a new jail because it's been over 5 years, and I'm just in sweat clothes. I have no money, no nothing. I'm like waiting for my sister to
Mhm.
figure out where I'm sitting,
Yeah.
and that I'm not actually going to go back to prison on the state side. And so, yeah, then it was like I didn't get any time to reintegrate. Like most people get halfway house and they get to do all that stuff to start to reintegrate into society. I was just plop, here you go.
Well,
And then
and
I
another thing
worked.
is, think about reintegration. That's such a key word for foster kids because reintegrating means not just aging out, okay, and locking the door behind us and putting us outside to our own whims, our own judgment, our own decisions. I mean, think about biological kids who go off to college. Their door isn't shut behind them forever. They are on the phone with their mom, their dad, their siblings. They are getting advice. They have people that are
My
like,
daughter's in college.
right. So you know that, and my daughter's in college right now too. And so you know that you are on the phone, you're encouraging them, you're going through their life with them. You're like, hey, if you fall on your face, guess who's going to catch you? I am here. You are never alone. Make the decisions that make you feel powerful, not the decisions that you feel confined to. My children and your children get to go out there and make decisions that, yeah, might risk failure, but they get to do that. They get to exercise that, and they get to have a sense of pride that we didn't have. How are you supposed to navigate and be a meaningful or productive member of society when your pride and identity were stripped of you right before being thrust into it? That's not possible, Kurtis. I mean, the credit that we deserve is credit we have to give to ourselves until our mission, Foster Fierce, is international. Okay. The credit that we have
Like
to
it.
give to ourselves is that we didn't do what we did without a boulder on our backs. Okay. We were constantly trying to dig out of holes that our parents and society created for us, and then to be rejected when we step into it with all that we know and it not being enough. Give yourself more credit because we are not at fault for these failures. We are going to change them as fierce alumni for our foster siblings in the system, though, because they don't deserve this. Nobody did, and we didn't either.
I remember sitting there when I was in prison in Arizona, and like I was walking the track. I messed up first. They sent me to Nellis Air Force Base, and everybody there, it was a camp, and everybody there was like, "You need to go behind a fence, and you need to earn your bones." And I was 19. I'm 20. I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. I'll do whatever I have to do in prison to make sure that nobody wants to mess with me." That's why I started lifting weights from the day I got there. I got
Mm-hmm.
as big as I could get in 5 years, and I did things throughout my time that I'm not proud of. I don't have any racist tattoo. Well, some might call. I have peckerwood on my back, which I am not proud of. I'm getting removed. At the time that I got it, it was because I listened to rap music and all these white guys were giving me problems, and they were like, "You don't know where you're at if a race riot jumps off." And I'm like, "I know where I'm at. I know what color my skin is." I said, "Oh, who gives a shit what music I listen to?" I'm like, "Just leave me alone." And they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't stop, so I eventually got that on my back, which it stands for poor white boy, is why I got it, because I figured it would let them know that I know where I'm at, but I also have friends. Like I still hang out with other races. I don't care what you guys think. I'm not gonna ever get a swastika on my body. I'm not gonna get bolts on my body, what they call. I'm not gonna do those things that you require you to hurt people of another race to get them. You just don't. Those don't ever really go away.
I have a few regretful tattoos. One, a girl in jail gave me. She used toothpaste. It's a blue rose, very faded now. But man, if I could just remove all the tattoos. She gave it to me. She had
Yes.
like a dissected cassette player with
Yeah.
toothpaste,
The motor.
ink, Bible paper. Yeah, like they were so damn creative. And
Yeah.
she
And
gave me
then
this
I
blue
have.
green.
Yeah.
It was beautiful, but I want to talk to you a
Yeah.
little bit about incarceration for men versus women because Now, I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that it isn't a bit brutal in there. You got to watch your commissary, okay,
What?
for women. But and you know,
Yes.
it's catty to be honest. I mean, if you're prepared as a woman for high school, you're prepared for just a slightly more extreme version of it in jail. I don't recommend it, but it is interesting, ladies. Anyway, for men,
I always heard the women were meaner.
no, they're, you know what they are? They're, so here's where the difference is, and just based on, and I'd like you to touch on this, just based on what I've heard.
Okay.
There aren't, that I'm aware of, that I've ever been to, and like I said, I've been to county jails all over Arizona. Not a badge of honor, but it's a badge I'm going to wear. It's one of my scout
Yep.
badges. I've been there. Okay, so
Yep.
let's talk about it.
Gotta have
Um,
own it.
but one of the differences is we're not political. We're not politically or racially divided in women's prisons. It's a lot different now. Or women's, let's say, incarceration, which I can speak to in jails. But even in the county jails, you know, the guys, the trustees would bring us our lunches and stuff. But and you get the rumors around there. White guys had to hang out with white guys, Mexicans with Mexicans, natives with natives, black men with black men. And that's so curious to me. I want to ask you about that, what that experience was like, because men are so much different than women in captivity
They
or
are.
outside of it.
Well, and to be honest, and I was never raised to be separate, like
Sure.
at all. That was never part of my life. I was never, in foster care, I always met kids that weren't white, In Montana, most of the
That's
other
interesting.
kids
Oh, wait, I'm so
are either
sorry. That's
native
interesting
or black.
because I thought we were segregated because I never saw any kids of any other race except in my only
Huh?
good foster home, which I stayed for 2 weeks. And it was a black foster mother. And she was actually a mother, you know,
Yeah.
and she had
Yeah.
her own children there. The only kids of any other race I saw while in foster care.
Brilliant.
That's
See,
crazy. Yeah.
and not necessarily in my homes, but I would meet them at functions and stuff like that. When they take foster care kids, go get some presents with the cops, and that kind of stuff that we always do. And they,
Sure.
I'm always like, "You're there beating my mom up last week, and now I have to go pick up presents with you." I'm like,
I'm so sorry.
no, no, that's the way it
Yeah.
feels, And as a kid, but I'm like,
I've
as
been
I said,
there.
now, yeah, I'm like, and now I know, I'm like, yes, if I would have seen my son at 7 years old telling, and my mom had me standing next to her yelling, F you pigs, get off our property. We don't
Yep.
want you here. Welcome, get the off our property. And I'm screaming and cussing and yelling, calling them pigs. I'm like, I'm
Yep.
7 years old.
Yep.
Nobody should have to witness a 7-year-old kid talking like that to someone who's only there trying to probably help them. And they don't
Right.
even know it.
I know I've been
And
there, Curtis.
it's
Yeah.
I think back and I get angrier at my mom when I do, and I try to, but that's therapy. My daughter convinced me finally to go to therapy about a year ago, and I am making what I consider huge strides because, like my therapist says I have an unhealthy hatred towards pedophiles, and I'm like, I think it's healthy.
Okay,
But
let's talk
I mean,
about
I want
that,
to hurt them.
Curtis. If you don't
And I
mind,
went to prison.
what's unhealthy
Well,
hatred first?
well, that's because I want to hurt. I've hurt a lot of them in prison. I don't care if you hurt women or children. I would. You were on my list. I would didn't
Oh my
care, and
God,
I
it's
had
like
to
an
earn my
Easter
bones.
basket. That's an Easter basket for you.
Oh yeah, no, it is.
Coming right to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. As soon as guys are coming to jail, I tell them if they weren't there for beating on women, I tell them ain't no women in here. You're gonna find it. Yeah, you'd be lucky if you eat anything while you're here because I'm gonna take your food.
I want to say,
That
if
was
I
not.
could ask you, I'm not trying to promote any ugly thoughts that kick you off your path, but as somebody who experienced what those people do, I just want to call you a hero in this moment.
Thank you.
Because
I
there are so many of them that I was like, God, I hope they get. I hope.
Yeah.
And there is no secret behind what
What they've
happens to
done.
them in the prison system. So that's all I'm going to say. Let's keep this appropriate.
Yeah.
I just think you're a
Yeah. Yeah.
hero.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I will try. Thank you. And like I said, edit out whatever I say that's not appropriate. I apologize. I try to be
Editing is
as
king.
honest and open as possible, but tactful when I speak. I was told so much growing up that I was stupid and that I was never going to amount to anything. And I felt that. And so when I got arrested at 19 and sent to federal prison, I took the GED without studying, and it was easy. And then I messed up in Nellis. And I had to go to the North Las Vegas jail for 6 months, which is a gladiator school. I've never been to any jail where I fought more in my life than North Las Vegas, City of North Las
God,
Vegas
yeah.
jail.
Where
It's
even
what they
is it?
consider
So that's North Las Vegas. Oh my God, that's like right by
Yeah,
the Greyhound. That's where
yeah,
where
it's a
people
very
go
bad
to
area.
become criminals. Yeah.
Yes. And so
Wow.
the jail was very rough, and I I spent probably time in every part of that jail because I got in so many fights there. And after they left, they finally got a
I
bus
can
6 months
imagine.
later, took us all to another prison in Arizona. That's where they drove us down over the Hoover Dam and down to Safford, Arizona,
Yep.
and dumped it. And I spent the rest of my time there.
There's so much behind the scenes to what we go through. I mean, and it's just crazy how it doesn't stop. Like the behind the scenes of foster care, okay? And then the behind the scenes of aging out. And then the behind the scenes of piecing it
Yes,
together while trying to navigate our own families. It's intense, okay? I mean, these
that's
things,
not.
I laugh out of relatability because you're touching on things that I thought I was going through alone. I know now in the
No,
last year,
and I hear
talking to
you. It's
people, yeah, and I hear these things. I'm like, oh my God, what?
no,
Like
we're
usually
not
I'm called a
alone.
liar or an exaggerator when I
Yeah.
tell these stories, and you're just right
And
off
I
the
feel
tongue.
like that because people are looking at me like you couldn't possibly, like you said, you couldn't possibly have gone through all this. I'm like, I didn't want to go through all this. You think I like telling everybody that I went through all this crap?
Right,
So I don't want you to feel sorry for me. That's definitely not what I'm looking for. I'm
right.
like, do I want you to at least acknowledge it? Yeah, I might be a little different than some people because I didn't quite grow up with a normal, even halfway broken family. Like when
Right.
you have so many of them and so many different versions, and people wonder why I'm not religious. I'm like, 'cause I've seen so many religions that I can't pick one, and I have so many friends of different religions. I feel like I'm being rude to one if I pick the other one, and I'm like,
That
I
is a
just
good point, Curtis. I want to talk to you about that. So I left foster care, not hating people who are religious, but with a grudge against religion because I feel like my belief system is so infinite because I've experienced and so many of our alumni who I've gotten to talk to on the show, and other people I've spoken to, they feel the same way. It's like what you just said. I'm not choosing a religion, because none of them have served me and I've been a part of all of them. And I feel like what my belief system is transcended from all of those experiences into one that helps, that is good for me. The other thing is, I don't care if you're religious or not. People think me being anti-religious means I'm mad at them for having religion. I understand that this world is diverse and so are the solutions that get us through the chaotic problems. I love anything
want to.
that gets somebody through this chaos that we call life. If it's
And
Catholicism,
honestly, I'm working on
Christianity,
that.
if you're a Baptist, a Muslim, great for you. Good. If you're a spiritualist, I don't care because your journey isn't getting me through mine. But I respect whatever is
Yeah.
getting you through yours. I respect that you believe it. That's where I've always been.
That's like, I had a bunch of people at work telling me they want to pray for me and I'm like,
Okay.
okay. I find, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I'm
Me
telling people
too.
okay and not just which God are you praying to?
Oh my
That's what I
God,
used to
me
say.
too. I'm such a cynic.
Yeah, I was flippant with people. I'm always like, which
Yeah.
one is it? And I'm like, well, when my real mom was there, I remember we lived in this other place where we had a bathtub in a ditch, and the holes in it were open, so the water just flowed through. So that was our bathtub. And I thought it was cool because I had a pond with snakes and frogs, and
Yeah.
I had a little Kawasaki motorbike with no engine in it. So me and my buddy would push it up the hill and just ride it down with no engine.
Love it.
But his mom, he was in a polygamous community right above us, Pinesdale, Montana. And so he had
Hmm.
like 4 moms and 20 brothers and sisters. I was
Hmm.
just like, I didn't think anything of it. Him and I
Right.
would play all the time. I didn't care anything of it. I remember
What would have
thinking,
been the point if you did care? What would have been the point?
well,
What
I'm like,
how would that have how would that have helped
it
you?
wouldn't have affected it. Exactly. It's like me and my buddy were out. We were always playing, and that's all that mattered. I was like, who cares? He's got 4 moms, and I barely have one.
Yeah. I love that.
But
I actually really love that the ability that we develop to accept all things, to accept all pathways, because foster kids, we don't want to proselytize people. We love
yeah,
every adventure, every journey. Everything to us is curious. It's more knowledge. I find that something that we share unanimously is the need for knowledge, the need for growth, empowerment. Like we're on a trajectory.
yeah,
We need to get more of our siblings on the path to awareness of what was their fault and what wasn't, and how they can change, how we
yes.
can pave the path for our siblings in care. because they don't have to experience what we did. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, when you're talking about education, like I took that, I'd heard that my whole time. When I got into federal prison, they made me get my GED. I wasn't happy about it. So I'm just going to get out and sell drugs. I don't need this.
Yep.
And I got it anyways. I didn't even study, got it. And then all of a sudden I started thinking more about, as time's going on. So I got over 5 years to do. And I'm about 3 years in. I'm just like, I'm tired of this. It's getting old. I can't ever be just good, and I didn't think I was very smart. And people, they had this free courses, a VT carpentry course through Eastern Arizona College. I have 69 or 68 credits through Eastern Arizona College. I'm a Gila monster. But
I went to Central. I got my GED at Central Arizona College in Casa Grande.
Okay, there you go. See,
so it's right there.
They were coming out to the prison for classes, and so I took this class of, it was a VT carpentry course, and it's blueprint reading, carpenter for math, some other thing, and then outside work. I aced everything, and I'm like, well, that wasn't really college. It wasn't really school. I just kept beating myself up, and my friends were like, no, dude, you're not stupid. Just try it, And I'm like, okay. So I asked the one person in my life who had any money, the one grandpa who didn't do anything bad other than try to help. I said, yeah, I will give you money for school anytime you want it. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you could, you don't have to send it to me. You can send it right to the college. I'm like, so that it's going to the stuff it needs to.
Right.
And he did. And I got 68 credits with a 3.76 GPA walking out of there. Most of my friends, by the end of that, and the only friends I had working in education were 3 black guys. We started taking pictures together, which was not, allowed really. You're not allowed to hang out much, but we did. I became known as I had to fight over the education once. Some junkie who was just like, you're just like the rest of us. You're not going to ever stay out of here. Do you think those books are going to keep you out of here? And I'd be like, it's a start. At least I'm trying. But he just
I hope so.
Leave alone until, yeah. I was with I was with an ex-girlfriend. Not crazy, we were both crazy because we were using drugs. And
hey, anybody that wanted to be my partner after I aged out had to have been crazy. Okay, I was not making great decisions.
We thought we were star-crossed lovers. We met at the attention home when she was pregnant and 14 and I was 15. And then I went away and came back and we were at the same, and then all of a sudden later in life we met up again. So we're like, oh, this is fate, and
Kismet,
before you know, we were rolling. And
yeah.
I was like 2 years and 8 months into 3 years probation, and I got a violation and had to go to 11 months, and they gave me 2 more years probation.
We get looked at a lot. There's a magnifying glass on us, okay? So where we say, oh, yeah, I screwed up or I relapsed, so do many people who are in the comfort of their own home, relapsing with their baby right next to them. And guess what? They sober up before anybody ever found out. And then they come out and they tell us what we should do with our lives. So don't get on yourself about relapses or screw ups or violations. They violated me when I was 18. I had done 2 years of probation. They violated me for no reason whatsoever, for moving into a safe apartment complex when they were transitioning my probation officers. So I had told and gotten permission from one. And he said, that's great. Just make sure to tell Brant next week you're meeting with him for the first time. Good job getting your own apartment, you single mother foster kid with a job on her own, doing nothing wrong. And by the way, 3 weeks and you're off probation. You did it. I saw my new probation officer that next Wednesday. He violated me for moving without telling him. Not that I had an option. He hadn't even taken his office yet. I went to jail after. That's what started my jail career. Okay, because I went to jail after that. 3 months solid. I had a child. They ripped my hope. They made me what I had to become to survive. So I want to let you know, it's just not fair to say, I screwed up again. People would have to say that all day long if they were being honest.
No, I love to hear how fierce you fight for your kids. I do, because I'm the same. Like, I say things that probably shouldn't say because of my background, and I had to become a man in prison from 19 to 25. So, I wouldn't say I'm a trained MMA fighter, but I could very well handle myself. I've been in so many fights that I just know how to fight. That's what happens when you grow up that. Like when I was young, I did, and I sucked. I got my butt kicked a lot because I fought a lot of bullies in grade school.
Reverse that for me.
A lot.
I was the bully beater, man. I was so good. It's crazy the way that we treat members of our society. I saw a post on LinkedIn, and it was talking about other countries and their prisons, and it somehow hasn't incentivized crime. But I know if you put a bunch of criminal Americans over in Switzerland, for one, which they have like rehabilitation, education, you're going in, you're turning your light on, turning it off, you have the books that you want. I mean, they have their own little suites, call them suites. And if you put a bunch of American criminals who are used to, we also don't have their social care and things that they have.
Yeah.
So here that'd be incentivizing. Get me off the street into that. Who do I have to rob? There it's meant to treat you in such a way that they want you to behave. Here we are treating people like feral animals, and then we smack them around a little bit. We put them in their kennels, and then we're like, okay, we're going to let you out. Don't do the same thing twice, but we haven't taught them how to be anything but angry and aggressive. And that's a really sad situation because so many of our siblings end up there. And so what I want to do is hopefully get ahead of them getting there. But honestly, our prison system and our foster care system are both privatized, and they're for profit. They're little entities that say that they're not.
Judges and prosecutors should not be allowed to own stock in a company where the only way they make their stock go up is by locking people up. Yep. It's like, how does that ever become legal? There's so many judges that have been found guilty for, sending kids to juvenile centers. And that was, when I was in prison, and I had to do my English 102, I had to do a report on, and it was about how they don't separate youth. Well, you got a kid in there for stealing a pack of bubble gum in there with a kid who's shooting at his mom. I did that. I had a burglary charge, and my cellmate was a kid who just tried to kill his mom with a 30-06, and I was like, and I was 17, he was 15, he was twice my size, but I'm like,
yeah,
it's crazy. He was trying to kill his mom.
I was in juvie. I was in juvie for pissing off my aunt, and I was in there with an 8-year-old boy, not in the same cell, but we had common area most of the time. 8-year-old boy shot and killed his 2-year-old stepbrother, shot and wounded his mother. And I was in there because my Aunt Rita was having a bad time with me. She didn't like that I wasn't doing whatever little thing I wasn't doing. So back then you could actually pay to put your kid in juvie for the weekend to give them like but for me, you're just scared straight type of thing. It doesn't really work on somebody that's in and out of juvenile detention centers because they don't have another place to put me and I don't have any other options. It's like, so you're giving me a weekend away from yourself and I'm going to go meet some cool people that I can relate to that have aunts just like you. Okay. So, I mean, we really do kind of start to acclimate to that environment, and then they expect us to do so much more. But Kurtis, really we need you back on this show. I really want you on as a regular. I'd love to unearth some other things too, really about specifically the prison system, incarceration rates with foster kids. I think that you are I bet you would, because you're a powerhouse and you're inspiring, and I'm just so grateful that you're at a place to share this, because people they're like, oh, tell your story. I love it when they say things like, oh, well, why didn't she come forward? Why didn't he come forward? You know what? Those aren't the kind of people that I want to have a conversation with, but I urge you to tune into my podcast so that you can learn what prevents us from coming forward. Questions like those to start. So, but Kurtis, you have been absolutely amazing. Before we end the show, I want to leave it to you. What is a message that you would like to get out there? I don't want to reduce it to just the world, but if you could just inspire the world real quick, I would really appreciate it.
Well, and I so many times along the road thought that this just wasn't going to happen, that I wouldn't be here, that I wouldn't have kids, that I wanted it all, and I used to think, but I'm here. I've got it. I've got an 18-year-old daughter who's an all-star. She finished first 2 years of college. She's loves me, and she's involved in my life. My son's the same way, and I'm like, my James Kurtis Learned the first just died Saturday. I am James Kurtis Learned the second, and James Kurtis Learned the third. Well, I never let him meet his grandpa, but I told them we were changing the name, and so you can change it. You can do, it's never too late. I keep seeing those stories about, like, what's that KFC guy? He didn't start Kentucky Fried Chicken until he was in his 60s.
That's a good point.
We don't have to, it took me a long time to get to treatment. That was the one thing I would say to anybody, no matter how long it takes, just try it. Try therapy. If you got to try different therapists, try them. But I found one who deals with foster kids and has for her whole life, and she has done wonders for me. Just making it so I can do this. I wouldn't have been able to do this a year ago. So without her help, and this, I guess, being an option for us to do, even, which is, thank you so much for giving us a platform to try to tell the world what happened.
Thank you. You guys, I just want to say this is a platform for us, and by us, I appreciate everybody in my audience, but this is for my Foster Fierce alumni, my brothers and sisters around the world. This is your platform. Come and tell your story and inspire the rest of us. That bridge of isolation, we don't need it anymore. We are connected now. A lot of you are, or some of you, let's say, our generation, okay? We didn't have social media. We didn't have connections. We didn't even have Google. We weren't able to look up what foster care was. We didn't understand it. But now that we do, and now that we have the power and the connection and the tools to come together, let's come together. Let's empower each other, and let's pave a road that is a little bit less uneven for our foster siblings to transition into, to thrive on. Right now, survival is not an option anymore. We've done it. We've survived. Let's thrive, and let's create an area for our siblings and our children around the world to do the same. And I really appreciate everybody here. Send me your story at iwafosterkid@gmail.com. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Every subscription, every listen, it really helps a lot. Remember that your sister is out here, your brothers are out there. We are not a foster child. We are a foster fierce family. And until next time,
Thank you.
stay foster fierce.